Okay, today we're making pork ramen. And the first step is to make the broth or stock. And you're going to want to weigh out your pork bones. And right here I have spare ribs, which is, at the moment, it's the cheapest way to procure pork bones. And you want to segment those into the individual bones. You don't want to cut too. I mean, you can uh, mess up on the cutting of this, but it won't affect anything if you do. And you want to roast those until they're lightly golden brown. And before this point, you wanted to steep mushrooms and kelp in your stock, I mean, in your broth. And this here is my second time ever using this instant pot. And you want to remove both the kelp and mushrooms right now. And now you want to add in 1/2 of a chicken. And the reason why for that is I want to add that to the stock. And the thing is, with the art of ramen, it's all about layering different sources of umami on top of one another until you make a very savory broth. It would be too expensive to put all of your money in one of these components, and it's actually far cheaper and better if you widen your range in how you procure the umami factor. For example, kelp. You can find that overly abundantly in the ocean. And mushrooms you can find overabundantly in the wilderness and in the darkness, depending on how good your area is at procuring them or growing them. And this here is the first time I ever showed off the kitchen in my videos. And the reason why was for the longest time I didn't actually have an oven. Now we do. Got that fixed due to a little bit of government funding due to the current outbreak, which I shall not name, or YouTube would demonetize this video for even mentioning the words. And you want to brown. I decided to go ahead and roast the other half the chicken for the tetsu. I forget the exact name, but it's a very concentrated savory sauce we're going to add into the ramen later on. And also, the other reason why I haven't showed off this room, besides the fact the tripod takes up almost 40% of the floor space, is that the lighting in this room is unusually green. I don't know what it is. The walls don't look green, though, in real life. And also, this oven came with a very new feature that I found pretty annoying, which is an auto shut mechanism. And what I mean by auto shut mechanism, I mean if you let go of it when you want it to stay where you put it, it will actually slam it shut really loud, almost shaking the glass off the door. And you want to remove your pork bones. And I decided to put the chicken back in to roast a bit more. And the other thing, problem with this time around, a lot of the footage I wanted to record just didn't record. And okay, now you want to deglaze the pan after you put the pork bones in the broth. You also want to put in a bit of bacon in there as well for added fat and or flavor. You want to drain the fat off, magically clean the stove with editing, and now you want to deglaze the pan. You want to heat that up on top of your stove and add the water. And you want to get as much of that baked on flavor as you can. And then you want to add that to the stock. And every time you do this for this recipe, which would be a total of 3 times, you want to go ahead and add it to the stock. And I didn't record all of those because you truly only need to see it once with just me telling you that I did it 3 times. Now, this is the pork shoulder. And what I found with this recipe, I wouldn't do this in a roasting pan. I would have done it on a plate. But you want to cure the shoulder and belly before you cook them. And you want to cure them with a 50% mixture of salt and sugar. And the other thing is we had to substitute pork jowl for pork belly because pork belly isn't anywhere because people keep buying it, but no one is buying the pork jowl, even though it tastes nearly identical to pork belly. No one just wants to associate their food with the face of the animal they're eating. That sort of became common human nature here in America. Just the way our butchery evolved. Marketing and all that pulled more and more away from the whole entire fact and idea of separating the animal from its meat, as in the eye, what you see. So, there isn't many people in the Americas who are actually seeing a live chicken be turned into one of those stockpot chickens. They just buy it in a bag, pre-frozen, pre-butchered. But, yeah, you want about a cup of that rub. And you want to rub it all over the meat. And one of the reasons why I suggest doing this on a plate instead of the roasting pan is because later on you're going to be removing the liquid that forms on the bottom of the pan anyway. So it would just be quicker if you were able to just pick it up off the plate and put in your dry pan. And you want to let both the pork jowl and belly cure for a minimum of 6 hours, but no more than 24 hours. Sorry if I'm not that too enthusiastic. This is the 5th attempt of making this commentary for this video. But you want to make sure that's good and rubbed in. It's always good to wash your hands when prepping. It makes sure cross-contaminations never happen. So this here's the next day. And you want to take your pork shoulder and put it in the pan. Now for pork jowl, I didn't get recorded, but you want to pan fry that. And you want to get it nice and golden brown. This, if memory serves correct, you want to put it in at about 350 to 80 Fahrenheit. Wait, no, I think it's closer to 345. And you want to leave that in there for a pretty long time, about almost 6 hours, if memory serves correct, if not a little more. Now you want to remove that. And then awkwardly reposition your camera so you can get it in frame. And then you want to remove that from the pan. And then you want to wrap that and save it for later. Remove all the usable meat. You're also going to want to deglaze that pan and then throw it in your stock or pour it into a bowl until you can depressurize your cooker and pour it in. You also may want to remove the fat off of it, but I decided not to this time. Now the thing is, in stocks, you normally do not want fat, but since we're making ramen, we want extra fat to give the noodles a more savory and rich flavor. And the whole art of true ramen is to layer flavors on top of each other to make a new unique flavor. One that cannot be replicated by using single ingredients. Now you want to clean that pan out. And then you want to put your... Oh yeah, I remember now. I made a mistake. I didn't know which one was the pork shoulder and which one was the pork belly. The previous one was pork shoulder. This one was jowl, not pork belly. And I thought this was the pork shoulder because with all the bits and pieces I got, you couldn't exactly thinly slice it neatly. So I thought this was the meat I was supposed to pull, and the other one was the one I was supposed to thinly slice. But yeah, you don't want to do that. Also, when recording this, I found out very late I also re-edited this 3 times because after watching it this video 3 times when producing the audio commentary, I removed a lot of excess footage I didn't need. But and it appears I missed a bit. About 30 seconds worth, but at this point I'm going to keep it in. Now you just want to slide that into your oven. And now you want to... Oh wait, you don't want to slide in your oven, you want to pan fry it. I just accidentally got them confused. But yeah, for pork jowl it would be better to pan fry it. And you want to get it really golden brown or caramelized as possible. And that will add more flavor to our ramen bowl later on, as well as some appeal. You also want to use your instant read thermometer to measure the internal cooking temperature of the pork to 150. 150 is the proper the temperature pork is safe to consume. But many food companies advertise that the cooking temperature is much higher because they don't want to the smallest lick of chance to be sued due to parasite infections, when a good majority of United States pork is safe and parasite free. But you still want to be really careful. There's still some little bugs in the works of tests here and there, false positives and false negatives. But you want to remove the pork bones, carrots, onions, and some of the fat, as well as the froth that formed on the top of the stock. And earlier you wanted to put those items in to impart their flavors into the stock. Damn Windows 10 pop-ups. Currently it's telling me top 25 Xbox One games of all time of 2000. I don't own an Xbox One, thank you. Leave me alone. But you want to strain that stock. And you also want to remove as many of the impurities as possible. And how you can truly test to see if your stock's good is through the amount of gelatin it has, and when it's cooled it will be gelatinous. That's how you know you have a stock. If it doesn't become gelatinous when cold, then it's a broth. But now you want to take your bamboo shoots, open the can, and pour them into the strainer. And now you want to combine those in a pan with the sesame oil and a splash of sesame oil and soy sauce. And then you want to let that stew for 30 minutes. Also, let's talk about some of the things that didn't get recorded, like slow poaching the egg. And if you have an induction burner like this at home, you can actually set it to stay at an exact temperature that within as long as it ends with a 0. And you want to keep the pot for your slow poached eggs at 140 Fahrenheit. And something I noticed with this model here, it has a 1 Fahrenheit degree variance over time. Meaning if you let it sit for average 10 minutes, every 10 minutes it would increase by 1 Fahrenheit. So you want to make sure it doesn't go above 145, and lower the temperature and make sure it does not go below 140. But I did not know that when the eggs cook, but the goal is to get the yolks into this nice, soft, creamy, in between cooked and raw, almost sauce-like. And since I cooked mine at 1, I know mine ended out with being finished at 155 towards the end when it was still in the shell. I didn't need to poach mine afterwards. But you can if you still want to, just to be safe. But slow poaching an egg just takes a long time. You could also accomplish it via sous vide. But if you want to accomplish it on a conventional stovetop, good luck, because that there is probably going to be a royal pain in the ass I wouldn't have the patience to deal with. And with innovations in gadgets and cooking, time has shown that it's just getting easier and easier to make better dishes. Then with the whole worldwide trade of e-commerce, which the world has grew dependent on, but in recent days have started to slowly collapse. Meat shortages here and there, a high increase of people being laid off, and all of this must be taken into the account of food distribution. You need money to get food. If you don't have money, you can't get food. But if you don't have people to move the food, you can't sell the food. If you can't package the food to be moved, you can't move the food to be sold. And that's the majority of the problem to why all the food shortages are occurring. That and people are scared who just buy all the meat they possibly can, leaving barely any for anyone else. I don't blame you if you do that, but that's why lately there has been limits put on how much meat you can buy in the stores. But the whole ideology of cooking is both art and science, as well as the know-how that is needed to think around problems, to substitute ingredients for others, and to use everything at hand to make a good dish. With reason, you can't make a beef Manhattan with apples. I thought I removed all of this.
Boy, you got a book that's never passed by Playboy, really?
Yeah, I thought I removed all this excess time in this segment. Okay, now you want to thinly cut your asparagus on the bye. And you also want to cut the ends off where they snap. And you can saute the asparagus if you wish. But for this, you don't have to. You also want to cut 2 green onions worth. I know you want to cut 1 green onion per bowl, nothing but the greens, but mine wilted, so I substituted for 2 green onion whites. I also used 2 asparaguses for my bowls. And on the side, you also want to heat up a pot of water to boil for the noodles. Oh, and let's talk about how you make the tetsumu, which didn't get recorded somehow. You want to take that one half the chicken from the other half that chicken from earlier, and you want to roast it until it's nice and brown on both sides. You then and you also want to cut that into individual pieces, wing, leg, and thigh, as well as breast. And then you want to roast that, like I said, and then you want to simmer it with a lid on with about, if memory serves correct, a cup to half of a cup of light soy sauce. And you must use light soy sauce or the final product would be way too salty. And you want to simmer that with mirin for, if memory serves correct, about 40 minutes. And you want on a low simmer. And midway through, you want to check it and rotate all of the chicken pieces by 180 degrees. And then place the lid back on. And the final product should look like syrupy and free-flowing, like molasses. It should look like warm molasses. It also feels like molasses, but it smells heavily of soy and doesn't taste sweet, but salty with a potent, savory flavor, along with a hint of soy. Also, for slow poaching those eggs, one heavily recommends the use and or aid of a whisk. You want to place the egg in the whisk to form a weighted protected cell to prevent the eggs from freely floating in the water. This also helps with more even cooking, as well as not allowing the eggs to float around the liquid and crack themselves and just leak their goop everywhere. Along with the goal of a cook is to further develop the arts of the culinary. Culinary has been evolving as alongside humanity ever since the first human walked upon dawn. As the years go on, more and more innovations within the way that we learn how the world works around us. along with finding means to exploit what nature has given us into greater bounties. For example, corn and wheat weren't originally how they are today. Through years of selection and hand breeding, we cultivated modern wheats, corns, so on and so on. So now you want to place your noodles in the boiling water. But not only is it the goal of culinary is to further understand the arts of the culinary, but how can we make things more cost effective? How can we make something that tastes good cheaper? And with innovations like these, do we fully learn the grasp of how to feed a starving world? You also want to make sure those noodles are well submerged. And when that's cooking, you want to fill your ramen bowl. You want to pick the bowl, and depending on the bowl, depends on how you're going to plate it. And how you're going to plate this may not be the same as I would plate it, but that's mostly dependent on the vessel you have at hand. A tall, deep bowl is preferred. But so the goal of cooking is both to further understand how we can progress the art as well as find a way to feed more people with the resources we have now. For these noodles, it takes about 3 minutes to be fully cooked. Also, after you go ahead and fetch the broth, you want to add a couple of about 2 spoons of tamaru until the broth is significantly darkened, but not too darkened. And the best bowl of ramen is one that is almost too salty. Also, you want to use a noodle spoon for taking that out of the water. I couldn't find mine, so I grabbed a slotted spoon, hoping it would do the same thing. Didn't. So, yeah, I used a meat fork. It pretty much did exactly what I wanted. And you want to nicely place that in the broth. And you want to build up from there as your foundation. You also want to add 2 3x3 sheets of edible nori, what they use to wrap sushi. And you want to place in some of your pork jowl or belly. place some of your pulled pork towards the back. And your green onions and asparagus on the sides. And now you want to take your eggs and you want to make sure you get a clean break. Just a little tap with a sharp knife. And you want to make that center page and carefully place it. Then you want to put bamboo shoots on top of the pork. And I forgot to grab the bamboo shoots to add to it. And I was wondering, that looks like it's missing something. But at the time, I completely forgot what. And I remembered after I turned off the video camera and took photos and I was about to eat it until I realized, oh yeah, bamboo shoots. So I pulled everything back out just to take photos of the plating with the bamboo shoots. And I made 2 bowls here, one for me, one for my gran.
Oh my god. I don't know, one time I took the fish and I went my shorts off. I came inside and mom's like, yelling at me. Because they were playing with me.
So, the whole, and humanity as a whole has been innovating different things as we learn the world around us, but yet we still find ourselves lacking the knowledge of ourselves. We have managed to send men to the moon, but yet we still do not know the inner chondry of the grand labyrinth of the human mind and psyche. For the only reason why we do not know ourselves as much as we do the stars is mostly because it is not that safe to study ourselves, for we cannot predict what another man will do in certain scenarios. For in order to do so, we would learn more about how the human mind works, but we don't know if that's going to be a catastrophic failure. Like all of the failed attempts of strapping monkeys to confiscated German missiles from World War II and sending them into space hoping they'd come home. And it took about, if memory serves correct, about the first monkey they sent into space was named Albert. Albert, the first, they felt so bad of killing the first Albert, they named the next monkey they used for the experiments Albert the Second. And it took them about 15 Alberts to figure out how to make a parachute. that can withstand re-entry. And there it is. Gorgeous. And that's the end. Of course, at the end, I will still show more photos of the dish like normal. And here we go.